Welcome to QuickSpeak, the English podcast that helps you learn English effortlessly. Today, we're going to be talking about a very common human emotion, one that can be both positive and negative, jealousy. We'll be using clear and simple vocabulary so you can understand this complex feeling and maybe even learn some new words to describe your own emotions.
Jealousy is something everyone experiences. You can think of it as that feeling you get when you're afraid of losing something or someone you really care about. It might be a friend, a partner, a job, even something material like a possession.
So it's like this feeling of threat, like someone or something might take away what's important to you.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And you know what's interesting? A little bit of jealousy can actually be normal. It can be a sign that you value something or someone. But when jealousy is really intense or lasts for a long time, that's when it can start to be a problem.
So there's like a healthy amount of jealousy.
Yeah.
And then there's the kind that can really mess things up.
Exactly. Let's imagine your friend gets a brand new bike that you've always wanted. You might feel envious, right? That's okay. It's natural to want nice things for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you turn envious into resentment, if you start acting unkind toward your friend because of their new bike, that's when the jealousy becomes harmful.
That makes total sense. And I think that a lot of our listeners can relate to that feeling, especially in romantic relationships. Why do you think jealousy is such a big deal in those relationships?
Well, I think it's because romantic relationships are built on trust, intimacy, and connection. So when we think there's a threat to that bond, our natural instinct is to protect it. Jealousy can arise from that instinct. It's the fear of losing that special connection with your partner.
So like when you think someone else might be getting close to your partner and you worry they might replace you.
Exactly. And all those feelings of insecurity can lead to a lot of negative emotions.
Yeah.
Anxiety, suspicion, sadness, even anger. It can also impact our self-esteem, make us question our own worth.
Wow, so jealousy can be a lot more powerful than I thought. Is there a way to kind of control those feelings? How can we deal with it in a healthy way?
The first step, I think, is understanding where those feelings are coming from. Are they coming from your own insecurities? Or are they based on something that your partner is doing? Once you understand the root, you can start addressing it. If you're always comparing yourself to others on social media, for example, that might be fueling your jealousy.
Social media. I think we've all been there. Seeing everyone's perfect pictures online, it can definitely make you feel inadequate. So are you saying it's about recognizing those triggers?
Yeah.
And maybe taking a break?
Yeah, that's a great starting point. And it's important to talk about your feelings. Don't bottle things up. If something is bothering you, talk to your partner.
Communicate openly and honestly.
Exactly. And listen to each other. Because jealousy often thrives on misunderstandings. So clear communication is really important to get rid of any doubts.
Okay, so we've got self-awareness, open communication, and maybe a little social media detox. What if the jealousy is really intense? What if it's making you anxious or depressed?
Well, if your jealousy is reaching that point where it's
Yeah.
affecting your mental health or your relationship, it's important to get professional help. A therapist can give you tools and strategies to manage those feelings in a healthy way. They can help you address any underlying issues that might be making your jealousy worse, like low self-esteem or trauma from past relationships.
So it's not just about pushing those feelings down, it's about understanding them and getting help if you need it.
Exactly. And it's interesting to think about, where does jealousy even come from? Why do we even experience this emotion?
That is a really good question. Is it something we're born with or is it learned? What do you think?
That's a tough one. From an evolutionary perspective, jealousy might have been a survival mechanism. Imagine our ancestors, right? They lived in small groups. They needed to protect their partners and their resources to ensure the survival of their families and their genes. Jealousy may have helped them guard those precious bonds and resources.
Wow, so you're saying jealousy actually might have helped our ancestors survive. That's fascinating.
It's a very compelling theory, isn't it? Our lives are obviously different today, but that emotional circuitry that drives jealousy, it still exists within us.
That's really interesting. So it's not just our instincts though, right? Our own thoughts and interpretations play a role too.
Absolutely. The way we see a situation can trigger or intensify jealous feelings. For example, if your partner is just being friendly with a colleague, but you interpret that as flirting, your mind might start making up stories based on fear and insecurity.
Oh, so we might be creating problems in our heads that don't even exist.
Exactly. And those stories can lead to a roller coaster of emotions. Anger, sadness, anxiety, all fueled by our own interpretations. It's important to just pause and really examine those thoughts to separate facts from assumptions.
Okay, so self-awareness and critical thinking are key.
Yes. We need to ask ourselves, are these jealous thoughts really based on reality? And, we're not always aware of the stories we tell ourselves. Sometimes they're kind of hidden beneath the surface. They influence our feelings without us even realizing it.
That's a little bit scary,
Hmm.
but it makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
our brains are trying to protect us, but sometimes
Yeah.
they go a little bit overboard.
That's a good way to put it. Research has shown that jealousy can activate specific areas in the brain.
Really? Which areas?
Well, studies using fMRI, which is a brain imaging technique, have found that jealousy activates some of the same brain regions involved in processing physical pain.
Wow, so jealousy is like a real physical sensation in the brain. It's
Yeah.
not just something we imagine.
It's incredible, isn't it? Our brains seem to process emotional pain
Yeah.
and physical pain in similar ways.
That is fascinating. So we've talked about how jealousy can be triggered by our thoughts, our interpretations, and even our biology. Is there a way to tell if the jealousy we're feeling is healthy or unhealthy?
That's a great question, and it's not always easy to answer, but there are some signs to watch out for. Healthy jealousy is usually mild and fleeting.
It doesn't take over your life.
Exactly. It's a small blip on the radar, and you're able to talk about your concerns with your partner in a calm and rational way without accusations or blame.
So it's about having an open and honest conversation
Yeah,
about your feelings.
exactly. And healthy jealousy can actually motivate you
Yeah.
to make your relationship stronger. It can encourage you to be more attentive,
Yeah.
more affectionate, more appreciative.
So it can actually be a positive force in a relationship, as long as it's managed well.
Exactly. It's about turning that potential negative energy into something positive and constructive.
That makes sense. What about unhealthy jealousy? What are some red flags for that?
Well, unhealthy jealousy is really intense and persistent. It hangs over everything. You're constantly suspicious and distrustful of your partner, even when there's no evidence to support those fears.
It kind of consumes you, right?
Exactly. And it often leads to controlling behaviors and excessive monitoring. You might start checking your partner's phone, reading their emails, following them around, trying to restrict their freedom.
That sounds unhealthy
Yeah,
and even scary.
it can be. And it often leads to arguments, conflict, and a breakdown in communication.
It creates like a toxic cycle.
Exactly. And remember, jealousy itself isn't a bad thing. It's a normal human emotion. It's how we choose to respond to it that makes the difference.
Right. So we've talked about how jealousy can be healthy or unhealthy.
Hmm.
What about social media? It seems like everyone's talking about how social media can fuel jealousy. What are your thoughts on that?
Social media is interesting. It can be a double-edged sword when it comes to jealousy. On one hand, it lets us connect with people, share experiences, build communities, but it can also be a breeding ground for comparison, envy, and insecurity.
I totally get that. You scroll through your feed and see everyone's perfect vacations, their perfect relationships, their perfect bodies. It can make you feel bad about yourself.
It's very easy to fall into that trap. We forget that what we see online is often a carefully constructed version of reality. People usually just share their highlights, their best moments, not their struggles or bad days.
It's not a real representation of their lives.
Exactly. It's like seeing the trailer for a movie, but not the whole film. And when we compare our own lives to everyone else's highlight reels, it's no wonder we start feeling jealous.
That makes sense. So how can we manage this? Should we all just delete our accounts?
Well, deleting your accounts might be a bit extreme, but there are things you can do to manage social media jealousy. First, just pay attention to how certain accounts make you feel. If you're consistently jealous of certain people or types of posts, unfollow those accounts or mute them.
So you can create a healthier online environment for yourself.
Precisely. And remember, you don't have to compare yourself to others. Everyone's on their own journey. What you see online is just a snapshot, not the whole story.
It's a good reminder to focus on our own lives, our own goals, our own happiness.
Exactly. Celebrate your own achievements, appreciate the good things in your life, and remember that you are unique and valuable no matter what you see on social media.
I love that. So social media itself isn't bad, but we need to use it consciously and set healthy boundaries.
Exactly. And if social media is causing problems in your relationship, don't be afraid to talk to your partner about it.
Communication is key, right? Have a conversation, set some boundaries, and maybe even take a break from social media together.
That's a great idea. You know, it's interesting because sometimes I think jealousy can come from deeper issues like low self-esteem. When we don't feel good about ourselves, we might feel insecure or threatened in our relationships.
It makes sense. Like all those negative thoughts
Yeah.
about ourselves just feed the fire of jealousy.
Right. We might doubt our self-worth, our attractiveness, our lovability. We might worry that our partner will find someone better, someone without all our flaws. And insecurities.
It's a vicious cycle.
It really is. And jealousy can erode our self-esteem even more,
Yeah.
which leads to more insecurity,
Right.
and then more jealousy, and so on.
So it's important to address those deeper issues. How can we work on building self-esteem if we're struggling with jealousy?
That's a great question. Building self-esteem takes time and effort, but it's so important for managing jealousy and for just living a happier life. One of the most important things is to practice self-compassion.
Self-compassion. So accepting your flaws, treating yourself with understanding.
Exactly. Instead of being mean to yourself for feeling jealous, just acknowledge those feelings and give yourself support.
So change that inner voice from a critic to a cheerleader.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And, it's also important to focus on your strength, your achievements, your unique qualities. What makes you special? What are you proud of?
Celebrate all those wins.
Exactly. And setting and achieving personal goals can be a powerful way to build confidence.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of accomplishment and progress.
It does. And it can help you feel more capable and worthy.
Yeah, so it's about investing in yourself,
Yeah,
in your own personal growth.
exactly. And remember, sometimes getting professional help can be really valuable for dealing with those deeper self-esteem issues.
Therapy can give you a safe space to explore those feelings
Yeah.
and develop those healthy coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. Building self-esteem is a journey. It's not a quick fix. It takes time, effort, and a commitment to self-care.
But the rewards are definitely worth it.
They are. When you develop a more positive self-image, you'll probably find that you feel more secure in your relationships, and you're less vulnerable to intense feelings of jealousy. You'll be able to face challenges with more confidence and resilience.
That's amazing. We've talked about a lot today. We've talked about the evolutionary roots of jealousy, the impact of social media, the signs of healthy and unhealthy jealousy,
Yeah.
and the connection between jealousy and self-esteem. What about practical strategies? What can we actually do when we feel that green-eyed monster coming out?
That's a really important question. It's one thing to understand jealousy intellectually, but it's another thing to actually know how to handle it when it's happening.
Exactly. Our listeners
Yeah.
would love to hear some real advice on how to cope with those feelings.
Yeah, I agree. Let's look at some specific techniques that can help us tame that green-eyed monster.
Sounds good to me.
Uh,
I'm ready to learn some new strategies. What do you suggest?
Well, the first step, and I think the most important step, is just to acknowledge those feelings. Don't try to suppress them or pretend they're not there.
So don't ignore them. Don't push them down. Face them head on.
Exactly. When you're dealing with any emotion, you need to admit it's there. You need to identify the specific thoughts and beliefs that are fueling those jealous feelings. What stories are you telling yourself about the situation?
Like, if I see my partner talking to someone at a party, my mind might jump to conclusions
Yeah.
and start making up this whole story about them flirting or being unfaithful.
That's a perfect example. So once you've figured out what those thoughts are,
Yeah.
you can start to challenge how true they actually are.
We have to take a step back and look at those thoughts objectively.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is there any evidence to support this thought? Is there another way to interpret this situation?
So we need to ground ourselves in reality instead of letting our imaginations run wild.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes just labeling our emotions can help.
I mean, like actually saying to ourselves, I am feeling jealous right now.
Exactly. It sounds simple, but it can make a difference. By naming our emotions, we create space between ourselves and those feelings.
It's like we're looking at those feelings from a safe distance instead of letting them carry us away.
That's a great way to put it. And another helpful strategy is to practice mindfulness.
We talked about mindfulness earlier. It's all about paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Exactly. Mindfulness can help us become more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting lost in them. So instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, we're focused on what's happening right here, right now.
Yeah, we're grounding ourselves in the present moment and observing those thoughts and feelings without being controlled by them.
Exactly. And mindfulness can also help with self-compassion.
Being kind to ourselves, even when we're struggling with tough emotions like jealousy.
That's right. We all make mistakes. We all have moments of weakness. It's important to forgive ourselves and just move on.
So instead of being hard on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we acknowledge those feelings
Yeah,
and try to learn from the experience.
exactly. And sometimes it helps to talk about how we're feeling with a trusted friend or a therapist.
It's good to share what we're going through with someone who cares
Right.
and can give us a different perspective.
It can be really helpful. And if your jealousy is coming from insecurities in your relationship, you need to talk to your partner about those concerns.
But remember, use I statements. Focus on your own feelings. Don't blame your partner.
Exactly. Like instead of saying, you're always flirting with other people, you could say, when I see you talking to other people, it makes me feel insecure.
That's a much better way to say it.
Yeah.
And it's less likely to make your partner defensive.
Exactly. And setting boundaries can also be helpful in managing jealousy.
We talked about that before with
Yeah.
social media.
We did. But it's important for other parts of our lives, too.
Yeah.
Boundaries are about protecting yourself, not about trying to control your partner.
Right. It's about creating a safe space where you feel respected in the relationship.
Exactly. And another helpful strategy is to try to focus on the good parts of your relationship. Instead of focusing on what's making you jealous, you can remember all the things you love about your partner.
It's about appreciating all those good things
Mm-hmm.
and remembering why we're with them in the first place.
Exactly. Remember why you fell in love. Celebrate their strengths, their
Wow.
kindness, all their wonderful qualities.
Yeah, shift our focus from what's missing to what we have.
That's a great way to put it. And sometimes it can be helpful to try and change our perspective on jealousy.
We talked about that a little bit before. What do you mean by changing our perspective?
Well, instead of seeing jealousy as this negative emotion that we need to eliminate, we can see it as a sign that something is really important to us.
Oh, so it's a reminder
Mm-hmm.
that this relationship matters
Yeah,
and that we want to protect it.
exactly. And, sometimes the best way to deal with jealousy is just to let it go.
That's easier said than done.
I know. But holding on to those jealous feelings is only going to hurt us.
Yeah, it's like that saying
Yeah.
about drinking poison
Yeah.
and expecting the other person to die.
I love that analogy. When we choose to let go of jealousy, we make space for positive emotions. Love, joy, peace.
It feels like a huge weight
Yeah,
has been lifted off our shoulders.
it really does. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just focus on your own happiness, pursue things you're passionate about, take care of yourself, find things that bring you joy.
When we feel good about our own lives,
Yeah.
we're less likely to feel jealous of other people.
That's right. When we're fulfilled and content with our own lives, we feel less threatened.
Yeah.
And less envious of others.
Yeah, it's all about finding your own happiness.
Exactly. And, sometimes the best way to deal with jealousy is to just be kind.
Kind to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and kind to other people.
Exactly. Approaching the world with a kind and compassionate heart can make it easier
Mhm.
to let go of those negative feelings and embrace a more positive perspective.
It's like a ripple effect, right? Kindness creates more kindness, and positivity attracts
Hmm.
more positivity.
I love that. And sometimes the best way to deal with jealousy is to change the story we're telling ourselves.
What do you mean by that?
Well, instead of looking at other people's success as a threat, we can choose to see it as inspiration.
So instead of thinking, why them and not me? We can think.
If they can do it, maybe I
The best way to overcome jealousy is to practice forgiveness.
forgiveness of ourselves and of others.
Exactly. When we hold on to resentment and bitterness, it's like we're poisoning our own hearts.
It's like we're carrying around this heavy weight that keeps us stuck in the past.
That's such a great image. When we choose to forgive, we let go of that burden and we make room for healing and peace.
Forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves as much as to anyone else.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And sometimes the best way to handle jealousy is to simply trust.
Trust ourselves, trust our relationships, trust in the process.
Exactly. Letting go of control can be scary, but sometimes it's exactly what we need.
Letting go can be so freeing.
When we choose to trust,
Yeah.
we create space for love, connection, and joy. Trust is so essential for any healthy relationship.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it really is amazing how just changing your perspective a little bit
Yeah.
can make such a difference in how we feel about things.
That's so true. Our thoughts can really control our emotions. If we change our thinking, we can change our feelings.
That's a great point. We've talked about so many different ways to deal with jealousy. If you had to pick just one,
Yeah,
what would be the most important takeaway for our listeners?
that's a tough one. But I think the most important thing to remember is that jealousy is a normal human emotion.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or that your relationship is in trouble. It just means that you care about someone or something and you're afraid of losing them. The most important thing is to just recognize it, figure out where it's coming from, and then find healthy ways to deal with it.
So it's not about never feeling jealous. It's about figuring out how to manage it.
Exactly. We don't have to let those feelings be in charge. We have the power to choose how we want to react.
That's so empowering. We have more control over our emotions than we think.
Yeah.
So by understanding jealousy, by noticing what triggers it, and by using the strategies we discussed, we can turn jealousy into a positive thing.
Yes. It's about learning from jealousy instead of letting it control us. Jealousy can teach us about our values, our insecurities, and the things we need.
It's like jealousy can be our teacher, guiding us to understand ourselves better.
I love that. And the best way to deal with jealousy is to just live your best life, pursue your passions, take care of your relationships, make a positive impact on the world.
When we're focused on living a good, meaningful life, there's not as much room for jealousy.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Filling our lives with purpose and connection is the best way to keep jealousy away.
Well, this has been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much about jealousy today.
Me too. It's been a really great conversation.
Thank you so much for being here
Yeah.
and sharing all your expertise.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on QuickSpeak. We hope you found this episode helpful.
We did too. And if you're struggling with jealousy, remember, you don't have to go through it alone. Talk to someone you trust. A friend, a therapist, or a counselor.
Yeah, there are people who can help. And don't forget to be kind to yourself. You deserve love and happiness.
Yeah.
Don't let jealousy take away your joy.
That's so important.
Be sure to subscribe to QuickSpeak.